All right, so welcome everyone. This webinar is brought to you by ERC Academic Advising and being presented by Pepper Anon, one of the academic advisors here, as well as
Amado Berrios, and one of the academic counselors here as well.
All right, so today we'll be explaining a useful tool available to you called the Degree Audit. So we have 1 hour for this webinar and we'll be answering questions at the end. So keep in mind all questions submitted to the webinar are visible to other participants. Due to federal law that protects students' privacy and records, we can't really discuss or answer specific questions about your records without written consent. But we'll do the best we can to just generalize and answer as many questions as we can during this time. So by registering for this webinar, you're acknowledging that your name and questions will be visible to us, ERC Academic Advising, and other attendees in the session as we go through them. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so what is a degree audit? Let's take a moment. Your degree audit is a checklist that displays all requirements needed for graduation. And then it shows what courses you still need to complete and uses courses you've already taken to show which requirements you have yet to fulfill. So your degree audit can also be found on tritonlink.ucsd.edu, which is the link that we have at the bottom of the screen. So on the main page of Triton Link, you want to click on the Triton Link Tools button. And then under the Advising Tools section, you want to click on Degree Audit. So you'll need to log in order to see your audit. So using your PID and your password. All right, so once you get to this page, you're going to click the button that says Run Audit. And then on the next page, you'll click the button that says Run Declared Programs. So there's a couple steps you have to do in order to get to your degree audit. And then you'll click View Audit so that you can see the audit that you just ran. All right. So when you look at the full degree audit, this one's a sample on our page. It's actually about 4 to 5 pages long and outlines all of your requirements for graduation. So if you've received credit for qualifying test scores or transfer coursework, you'll see those reflected on your degree audit as well as on your academic history. So at the top of the audit, you can go to the very first page, you're going to find your name and your PID, your declared major, which is at the top in the middle, your overall GPA, and your total units completed and progress towards the 180 unit minimum to graduate. So on the left-hand side of each of the sections, you'll see indicators that tell you whether you've completed that requirement with a green okay or yes, or if you still need to complete that requirement, it'll be a red no. So you can also see the date and time you requested this audit at the very, very top. So degree audits are only accurate up to the date and time listed at this section, which is basically when you refreshed the audit last time in the process that we showed you earlier. If you keep scrolling down on your degree audit, you'll find the major requirements section. So here you'll find your major requirements, courses you've already taken or are currently taking towards those requirements, how many courses you need to complete for that requirement, and course options you can take to meet that requirement. So again, on the left-hand side, you'll see a green yes or no that indicates whether you have completed that requirement or not. If you have any questions regarding your major requirements, you'll have to consult with your major advisor using the online advising system in the new student site. So we recommend contacting them sooner than later to figure out what you need to do. So if you scroll further down in your degree audit, you'll find your college GE requirement section. And similar to your major requirements, here you'll find your GE requirements, courses you've already taken or are currently taking towards those requirements, how many courses you need to complete for that requirement, and course options you can take to meet that requirement. So depending on if you have transfer agreement or not, your audit will look a little different. So let's start with IGETC certified. If you have a IGETC certification, UC reciprocity, or a GE certified, your audit's going to look like this for this section. And you'll only need to complete MMW 121 and 122 for your ERC GE requirements. You can see your specific transfer agreement at the top of this section as highlighted in yellow. So if you're a partial IGETC certified, partial UC reciprocity, or partial GE certified, your audit will look like this, and you'll need to complete MMW 121, 122, and the 1 to 2 classes you're missing from your transfer agreement. So your degree audit will list the missing requirements. Courses you have already used towards your partial agreement may not be used again to complete these missing requirements because obviously you've used it for a different section already. And again, you can see your specific transfer agreement at the top of this section. So if you don't have a transfer agreement at all, you'll need to complete MMW 121, 122, and the remaining ERC GE requirements that have not been completed using your transfer coursework. If your audit looks like this and it says transfer at the top, like it's showing on the screen, you're considered an articulation student. So contact ERC Academic Advising using the online advising system in the new student site if you believe this is an error or if you have any questions about your GE requirements at this time. So if you keep scrolling down in your degree audit, you're going to see your university requirement section that will show you whether you've completed entry-level writing requirement or ELWR. Most of you, because your transfers, you would have already completed that before you transferred in. The American History requirements and Institutes requirement, the AHI requirement. Most of you would have already completed this with your high school transcripts if you've taken an American History or American Government class, or if you took it at community college before transferring in. Most of you would have completed that as well. The diversity, equity, and inclusion requirement, most of you will have to do this requirement, and you would not have met it through classes you transferred in. So that'll be something new for everybody. And a minimum 60 upper division units, of course, is to graduate. So that's in the university requirement section. All right, so let's look at an example. So for this student, they have some transfer coursework that was approximated to UCC courses, as you'll see on the screen. So for example, they went to Modesto Junior College and took Bio 111, Psych 103, and Psych 102. And those are approximated to Build 10, COGS 17, and COGS 14A at UCSD, respectively. So it's showing as completing some of their lower division natural science and formal skills requirements on their degree audit for their specifically psychology major. So this is how you would read comparing your academic history versus your degree audit to see what requirements are being completed with the stuff that you've transferred in. All right, so courses that do not count towards a specific requirement, such as for this student, Soc 101 and Theater 100 gave them Soc 1 credit and TDGE 1 credit at UCSD respectively. They show up at the bottom of the degree audit under elective courses. So they do count as credit, you do get elective course credit for it, but it's not actually counting towards specific requirements in your degree audit, if that makes sense. So as you can see, this tool can be really useful in helping to ensure you're meeting all the requirements to graduate. So as you continue to take courses towards graduation, your degree audit will keep track of your progress as long as you keep refreshing your audit on Triton Link whenever you make a transaction. But if you refresh it now and then refresh it 2 seconds later, nothing's going to change. It's only when you make a transaction is when it'll change. So the GE and DEI sheet is a great resource to help you choose GEs for fall quarter, and a link to it will be available in your course recommendations on the new student site. We only provide this GE sheet for you for your first quarter to help you get started in fall. But for subsequent quarters, you'll have your degree audit, the ERC website, as well as us in ERC Academic Advising to help you with choosing those courses. So this is just to help you with fall, and then when the year starts, you can actually come in and talk to us about any questions you have about these things. So throughout the summer, we'll be hosting a few more webinars and sending videos and other helpful information. So please review the important dates and deadlines in the calendar in the new student site at newstudent.ucsd.edu, and keep checking your UCSD email address for those updates from ERC Advising. So online advising is available on that site, so feel free to submit questions throughout the summer, and ERC Academic Advising and your major department will be happy to help you through there as well for more specific questions about your records. All right, so at this time, we'll begin our question and answer portion of the webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to submit them through the webinar system, and the counselors will answer them live. So as a reminder, due to federal law that protects students' privacy and records, we can't discuss or answer specific questions about your records without written consent. But we'll do our best to generalize and answer as many questions as we can during this time. By registering for this webinar, you're acknowledging that your name and questions will be visible to ERC Academic Advising and other attendees in this session.
All right. So as talked about, we are starting the Q&A portion of our webinar, and then what I'm going to go ahead and do here is you're going to get to see what we actually look like. So I'm starting the video. So let's see if this is working. Let's try this again.
There we go. There you are.
Okay.
So I can see you. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So Hello, everyone. Welcome. And then I see that we have a couple of questions that have come in already, so that's good. If you don't know how to ask a question, there is a Q&A box on the tool section, or like where you can find all the information. And so you can just click on that, open it up, and then you'll be able to ask questions. In addition, as you start asking questions, what I would recommend that you all do as well is, if you see a question that you can, you have the same exact question as somebody already wrote on there, go ahead and thumbs up the question. And what that does is it'll start bringing it towards the top, and we'll try to get to it. And that means we'll get to it a lot sooner than we would, especially if you submit it after, all the questions that come in so far. So again, to also keep in mind, as we're going through the questions, I may generalize, or as I'm reviewing the questions, I'm going to put some of them in general terms, especially if there's specific information. And again, this is to protect you or to protect all of you individually from, we can't discuss your own personal information out through this webinar. However, we are able to still answer your questions in a very general sense. So let's go ahead and get started with the first question that came through.
Sure.
And so the first one says, they're asking about their degree audit, and it says on their degree audit, no classes are showing on there, which then therefore shows that they're not fulfilling any requirements. And so does that mean that, is it safe to assume that transcripts have probably not been processed, or is there a chance that they haven't been received? Is this something that they should be concerned about? And then what we would suggest for them to do.
Okay. So I believe if you look up in your admissions, your My Application page, or what is it called? The Be a Triton page, you should be able in there to see like a checklist to see if your transcripts got received or not by UCSD admissions, as well as your if you have any transfer agreements or not. You can actually check in there to see if they've been received by us. And by us, I mean admissions. Because there's so many of you all, and some of you come in with your transfer agreement. Maybe a couple of you have come in with also like AP scores, test scores, SAT scores, things like that. So that's a couple pieces of information, as well as maybe a couple transcripts. Maybe you didn't go to just one school, you went to a couple schools, and for one person, that could be like 5 or 6 different pieces of paper, right? And there's about 500 of you all at ERC that are submitting all of that stuff at one time. So admissions is working really hard to try to get that done, as well as we have about maybe like 1,200 freshman students who are also submitting all that information as well. And that's just for ERC. So for ERC, if you're thinking about that, that's about like 1,800 students, with maybe 5 or 6 different things that they're transferring in. That's just ERC, and we have 6 other colleges. So that's a lot of information that admissions is trying to upload all at once by our August 15th deadline. So as of now, if you don't see any information, it doesn't mean that you haven't, that it's not going to be posted or anything like that, or there's anything wrong. It just might be, they might be taking some time before they can actually submit everything or upload everything that they can. But again, our deadline should be by August 15th, that most, if not everything, should be uploaded by that time. So if you don't see anything right now, don't panic. If on your Be a Triton page, it says that they haven't received anything from you, then you should panic. Then you should definitely send it in, all of your transcripts and all that stuff. But as of now, you should be okay, and just wait until about August 15th. If by that time you don't see anything, then definitely contact us through the online advising system.
Perfect. So for our next question, if a student is interested in either adding a double major or even potentially a minor, how would they go about that process, and when is it that they can start doing that process?
Okay, so for the minor, let's start with that first, because there's the minor and the double major, right? So for the minor, you can declare a minor once you start here at UCSD, and by starting, I mean like the fall quarter has actually begun, because you can't actually adjust anything on your records in terms of like changing your major, adding a minor, doing anything like that. You can't do anything until you're actually enrolled in classes. So at this point, you won't be able to do anything. But if you go into Triton Link, if you go into Triton Link tools, like Amato is showing you right there, there's the section on there for the major and minor tool. That's where you can actually do that once you enroll in classes when fall quarter starts, is that you can declare a minor at that point. We would recommend that you contact, if you're thinking about a minor, go ahead and use the online advising system in the new student site. and talk to that minor department and say, hey, what do I need to do? What classes do I need to take? What can I do maybe starting in the fall if you have some space, if your major maybe doesn't have enough classes for you to take, or you're not supposed to take anything in fall for your major. You can start off with that and then kind of throw that into fall if you wanted to, and then declare it later. And that's totally fine. So that's for minors. That's how you declare it. You can't declare it till you start here, but you can start looking at classes right now if you wanted to, or talking to the departments right now. For a double major, let's go back into Triton Link. TritonLink.ucsd.edu, just so they see where to go. And you want to go to student forms, okay? And then if you scroll down, there's a place that says like double major petition, as a motto showing you online. This is the form that you'll have to fill out, and then at the bottom on the second page has all the regulations of what you need in order to do a double major. None of you can apply for a double major in your first quarter. The reason is because you need a UCSD GPA, and because you all are starting here, you're not going to have a GPA yet. So you can apply for the double major at the earliest. I would actually probably your spring quarter is when you can actually apply for it, because you do have to take a couple classes in that second major first in order to see if you're going to be successful in it, and that's part of the regulation. So probably you can look at the form, see what you need to do in order to apply. You can take classes like fall and winter to see if you like it, talk to the department obviously, and then if it's still good, spring quarter is when you can actually fill out that form and submit it, probably at the earliest. Otherwise, it'll probably be like a little bit after that, maybe like in the summer or the fall of your second year. But you can start taking classes for it, obviously, like right in the fall if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm. And then I'm also showing you really quickly also on the ERC website, we also have another section. So I went to roosevelt.ucsd.edu, and then as you can see here under academics, if you go to majors, there's a double major resources tab over here that we have, and a lot of the information that's both on the double major petition form, the PDF file that you can find on Triton Link. We also have some of that information on here, but to highlight what Pepper just mentioned to you all, right, is you must have completed significant prerequisite work for both majors. And so you can see at least 50% or more of the lower div courses for each major, at least 3 upper divs for each major. So it does include that you have to fulfill some of the coursework before you're eligible to apply for double major.
Right. And so at this point, you might not actually qualify for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so probably, like I said, maybe like the earliest is probably like spring quarter,
Mm-hmm.
And definitely after fall quarter, because you definitely have to have a GPA first.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have to wait. So there's nothing you need to do at this point. You might want to talk to the second major to see, like, what's it about? Are you interested in it? Just to kind of explore for now. But there's nothing that you actually need to do at this point. So that can wait until fall, and you can actually talk to us in person to kind of get that ball rolling.
Okay. So now within the topic of majors, the next question is, if someone is interested in changing their major,
okay,
how do they find out what classes they'll need to take to be able to graduate in the new major that they're thinking about?
Okay. So there's a couple places that you can look. You can actually look in the catalog. So maybe if Mo can pull it up. So catalog.ucsd.edu. And you can look at this now. This is available to everybody. You can go to the courses, curricula, and faculty link. And this has all of our majors in here. So if you're thinking about switching, to something else, you can look at the department, see what requirements are needed for that specific major that you want, and kind of plan it before you start changing your major and seeing, like, do I even like this? Is this something interesting that I want to do? Before you kind of click the button to change your major. So that's one resource. Another resource you can also use is the online advising in the new student site, where you can, again, contact your major, the new major now, and say, like, hey, I'm this major. If I want to change, what does that look like? Another thing is, like we said, you can't change anything in terms of your records until you're enrolled in classes. But let's say you enroll in classes for the fall, and you change your major at that point, your degree audit will actually update overnight. And then you can refresh the page, and it will show you your new major and what those requirements look like as well. So that's another resource if you're like, for sure, like, I'm definitely going to change my major. So your degree audit will actually show all that as well. But if you're not sure, if you're a little bit hesitant about changing your major at this point, I'd say use the catalog, use the online advising system to see what you would need to do before you make that switch.
Okay. So now the next question is on the topic of our GEs. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to have to generalize it a little bit, but it says, so if more than MMWs are shown on a degree audit as missing, so right, maybe there's another requirement such as quantitative formal skills, for example, Does that mean that they have to take those classes? And I guess maybe we can cover a little bit the transfer agreements again in terms of what we did cover that in the presentation, and I can go back to the slides, but
Yeah.
In terms of, what that means if they're showing more than MMW missing.
Okay. So let's go back to the slides first so we can see what the transfer agreements are, to kind of see what your degree audit should look like. And you can do a comparison too, to see what your audit looks like versus what we're going to be showing you on the screen. So going all the way back.
Let's see. So if you're, let's see if this works.
You might have to escape out of this one first. There we go. Now you go. Now you can do that.
From that one. Sorry.
It's all good. It's all good.
So let's start with, which one should we start with? With the GETC partial.
Let's go with the GETC. Let's do all three of them again, just so we can show them. There you go. And then also in the new student site, under the transfer agreements and GEs page, I think in the new student site, there's like a page that actually talks about each of the agreements. It actually tells you what GE requirements you need to do and how to submit that, so we know that you have a transfer agreement. So don't forget to look in the new student site also about and kind of read over those. But for your degree audit in particular, if you're a GETC, if you have UC reciprocity and you submitted the information for that, or if you're GE certified, this is what your audit should look like for the GE requirements or ERC college requirements. It should say something at the top where it says you're a GETC, or you have UC reciprocity, or you're cleared in some way. And the only things it should show is MMW 121 and 122. And that's it, as Amato's highlighting right there. So that's all it should say, is just those two things. So let's move on to the next one, which is if you have a partial agreement. So as at the top, it'll say like I GETC partial, or it'll say like partial UC reciprocity, something like that. And then it'll have MMW 121 and 122, because all of you have to do those classes anyways, regardless. So all of you have to do that. But if you have a partial, you'll have another section that also says you need additional things, either no more than 2 classes. You can't miss more than 2 classes to get a transfer agreement for a partial. So this could be what your record looks like, is that you have like either you're missing one thing, and it'll show you what requirements you need in order to meet that. So if your audit looks like this, then going back to that person's question, yes, you'll have MMW 121 and 122, and maybe 1 to 2 other things. So that kind of depends. So let's go to the next one. Thinking. There we go. So if it just says transfer at the top of your degree audit, then that means that you are considered an articulation student. It means we never got anything that says you have a transfer agreement, which means we're looking at everything, like all of your classes one by one, to see if they fit into our GE requirements. So that means you may be held accountable for the MMW classes, obviously, so everyone has to do those. Maybe our language requirement, regional specialization, fine arts, our quantitative formal skills, as the question asked before. So you might have to do those classes if you are an articulation student. So if you believe you have a transfer agreement and your audit looks like this, definitely contact us and say, hey, I'm actually a GETC certified, or I'm partial certified, or I'm UC reciprocity, or I have partial UC reciprocity, or I have GE certification, and we'll help you kind of navigate to make sure that your degree audit is updated to the way that it should look. But if it looks this way, then yes, you might have to do some classes that meet your GE requirements. For example, like in the question of quantitative formal skills, or any of the other ones that are missing. But it won't be like all of your stuff is you'll have to finish all of the ERC GE requirements if you're an articulation student, because a lot of the stuff that you've taken already and you've transferred in might already count towards some things. So instead of doing all the GE requirements, you might have to do like maybe like 3 or 4, 3 or 2, something like that. So you won't be starting from scratch, basically. Even if you're an articulation student, you're not going to be starting from scratch with our GE requirements. You might have to do some things, but not everything, if that kind of helps. So to go back, you said something about like what classes you need to do, right? Or
in terms of, so I mean, the question is, and then if they do have to, if they have to meet those requirements, and we basically covered it, which is like, if you look at the audit, it'll tell you over here where it says courses. So if you're missing a requirement, you can check to see the list of classes that are options on there. In terms of specific recommendations, it's kind of hard to tell, right? Because what may be easy for me may not necessarily be easy for you, or what I find interesting may not necessarily be something that you find interesting. So it's a little harder for us to specify which specific course you may want to take or should take in particular. But again, if you want to find like a list of classes that you can choose from, you can always take a look at the courses section on your degree audit, and it provides you a general list of classes that would meet that requirement in order for you to complete the requirement.
Yeah, you can also look on our website. If you go to roosevelt.ucsd.edu, so if I'm it's going to be pulling that up, then under our GE requirements, so let's go to Roosevelt. Yeah, I do that too. All right, and then so under academics, general education, and you can actually scroll down to this portion, and all the little drawers open up, and you can see what classes can count towards that. And you can take a look at what the title is and see if it's interesting to you or if it's something that you might be able to do. And then actually, if you scroll all the way down to like past those GE requirements, you can actually see the requirements for transfer students as well. And so it explains on our website as well the different transfer agreements, what you need to do, what you don't need to do. Especially for articulation students, you can kind of check that out as well of what all the requirements are that you'll need to do. But again, some of them might already be done with stuff that you've already transferred in. But this is where you can find all that information if you want to kind of peruse and you really are an articulation student of what classes we take for those requirements.
Okay. Then, so the next question that we have here is, so if on their records it shows a different major that they're interested in, and especially if it's within the same department, maybe they want to go from a bachelor's of science to bachelor's of arts. When can they make those changes, and how do they do that?
Right. Okay. So as we said before, you can't change anything at this point because there's nothing on your records or you're not enrolled in classes. The system doesn't let you do anything unless you're enrolled in classes. So the best thing to do is message us through the online advising system in the new student site and say, hey, I meant to do a BA instead of a BS, or I meant to do, this type of major. I forgot to write it into my academic background. And we can update stuff for you in terms of your course recommendations right now, because we're working on those right now for all of our students. And let me just be really clear too, that all the course recommendations that you're going to be getting in the new student site, we tailor it specifically to what you provided in the academic background and in the transfer questionnaire. So that's why it's really important for you to fill that out. That we do every single student individually. So like I said, we have about 1,200 freshman students, about 500-ish transfer students. We touch every single one of your records individually and give you the course recommendations that you need. They might look a little bit generic, but it's actually more specialized to what it is you provided us and what our recommendations would be for what you should do in fall. So given that information, we're doing that right now, and they should be released August 16th, I believe, to all of you. So you'll be able to see it then. But since you can contact us through the new student site, go ahead and do that and say, hey, JK, I meant to do something else. And then it was no problem. We can just go in and change it right now. So then August 16th, it'll be released to you and it'll be correct to what you want to do. So if you have any issues or you want to change something, go ahead and tell us. We'll update our recommendations to you. And then once you enroll in classes is when you can officially change things on your records, like changing your major. Somebody asked about adding a minor before. You can do that as well. Except if you're a capped major, if you're trying to get into a capped major. So Mata, if you can pull up maybe what the capped majors are for our transfer students. There we go. So if you go to ucsd.edu and just type in capped majors, should be the first one that's on the list that comes up when you search. These are all the capped majors we have at UCSD. What that means is they are limiting the amount of students that are in that major. So not everyone can be that major. If you declared it or if you try to get into it, you might not have gotten that major. So you have to meet certain benchmarks in order to get into the major. So if it's any major outside of these, let's say you were switching, like that one question was going from a BA to a BS in the same department, should be fine. If you're going from a non-capped major like sociology to a non-capped major like linguistics, you can just do that whenever you enroll in classes, no big deal. But if you're trying to get into a capped major, like one of these on the page, you have to take classes in order to qualify first. And it's kind of a rigorous process in trying to get into these majors, and it's not a guarantee either. So you might be working towards getting into this major and not get in, and that's totally possible. Some majors are not accepting transfers at all into them. So biology, none of the biology departments majors, you can't be any of those if you're transferring in. Econ, they're not accepting transfers either. A weird one also is computer science and engineering. They are taking transfers, but everything is a lot of lottery. So like even if you met all the qualifications to apply, you get a 4.0, you might not get into that major either. So that's just kind of a small caveat of changing majors, is that you can if it's a non-capped major. If it's capped major, there's some extra things you have to do. And when you go to this page, for the capped major page, you can actually click on each department and then see what the requirements are for trying to apply into those majors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm just doing econ, for example, and then you go to, there's a section for transfer students. If you click on transfer students, and here it states here very clearly that you must be declared a major at the time of admissions to UCSD. If you've declared another one, you'll not be able to declare it, right? So most of them will have a tab that'll have information for you, particularly as a transfer student, and whether you are eligible or not, and what the requirements are if you're eligible to go ahead and make that change. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so the next question is, can students take upper division courses even if they've only have lower division credit? And I guess this one is more specific to you know, for example, it sounds like maybe the question is regarding a major where math is involved. And so if like they have to still take like math 10C or something for a major requirement, are they still eligible to take upper division coursework?
Okay. If you've already met some of the lower division requirements to get into upper division units, then yes, you can do that. You might have to check the courses that you want to take and see if you have the prerequisites to get in. Math is a little bit of a special case, only because some of the stuff that you brought in, it could count as a prerequisite, it might not. They might have to see and make that comparison. So definitely talking to the math department on the new student site and the online advising system and asking like, hey, I took this class over here. Does it count for that at UCSD? Is that okay? And seeing if you can get into the upper division classes, and that's fine. As transfer students, you should be taking upper division classes because the majority of your stuff would have been lower division from when you transferred. So yeah, you should be taking upper division classes. And I'm gonna reverse that question. So if as a transfer student, could you take lower division classes? Yes, absolutely. Especially if you're thinking about changing your major into something else that you maybe have not taken classes in. Yes, you could do that as well if you wanted to. But in upper division classes, yes, you can do that as long as you have the prerequisites for it. And the best way to do it is like Amato's showing. You could look in the general catalog to see what the prerequisites are for that specific class you're looking to take. So like, for example,
so what I'm doing is I pulled up, for example, you know, like bio majors need math as a requirement, right? And so once you get to the upper division coursework, you'll see here, like it'll tell you what the prerequisites are. And so for this example of BIBC 100, you'll see that no math is required, although OCAM is required here as prerequisites for some of these classes. So you would generally use something like this to say, is this something that's a prerequisite or not? And if you don't see that math class that maybe you're missing as a lower division, but you've met all the other prerequisites, then at that point you would be eligible to take that class.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I keep saying this only because it's a really useful tool. It's like you all have access to all the major departments right now using the online advising system in the new student site. So any questions you have about specific, like, can I take this class or am I allowed to do this class? You can ask them right directly through the new student site. So definitely use that before you start enrolling classes, because you don't want to start asking those questions when your enrollment time comes, because then by that time, who knows if the class you want to take is going to be filled up, you know? So you want to get all those questions answered before you start enrolling. So right when you enroll, you're just in the class, you can just enroll in what you need to, and everything's good to go. All the prerequisites are taken care of. All of the, your questions are answered. You're in the major that you're wanting to, or you're trying to get into the major that you're trying to change into right before you enroll. So it's a boom, boom, done. And you're all set to go.
And then what I'm trying to do here is just pull up, if I can, I might be able to do that, but.
Oh, for the new student site?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's go back out into, sorry, looking at the different screens. Go to new student site, a little bit to the right, and the third one from the bottom. There we go. There we go. We're trying to pull up an example for you all, but we have to open it in our test student so that we're not using someone's specific information, basically.
There you go.
So there you go. So for the new student site, this is what it should look like for you. you should be able to go to the very bottom and then like click the next button. There we go. So if you haven't done this yet, you've done like your academic background and did all that stuff. Just keep clicking the next button at the very, very bottom. And then on the online advising, you can see on the page, this is where you can ask questions to the department, to us, and you can actually choose, as you can see, Amada's pulling up, like you can send it to your specific major or literally any major that we have on campus about any questions that you might have. So even though, for example, our test student is a CSE major, computer science major, let's say we wanted to ask a question of like the music department, you still have access to them as well through this page.
Go ahead and ask your question and go ahead and submit it, and it'll go to the respective department that you're submitting as well. Yeah. Just make sure you click the radio button over here too. Make sure that it goes to them. Otherwise, it'll come to us, and then I mean, we'll get to it, but we'll have to forward, so it may take a little longer to get your answer for the question.
Yeah, and again, like there is a button down there right below that that pull down menu that says I don't know, and that's okay. Just go ahead and click that, and we'll route it to whoever needs to get it. So you don't have to worry about it, and we'll take care of it for you. But definitely using this resource is really important.
Okay, perfect. So now the next question is regarding courses for fall quarters. So which is something interesting because we're working on those, right?
Yeah,
so
we are. Like forever.
Yeah. So so how many courses would we generally recommend to a student? And then let's see. And then whether or not, I mean, we touched upon it a little bit about that. So actually, let's just go with that first question in terms of how many courses would they generally be taking during their first quarter?
Okay, so for your first quarter, I mean, it really depends on what you submitted in your academic background and what you submitted in your time commitment questionnaire. So in the questionnaire, we asked a lot of questions about, you know, how you spend your time. How long do you commute if you're going to be commuting to campus, or are you living on campus? Do you have a job? Are you working? Are you you know, using different resources and things like that? And then we also had like that little open response box that says like, you know, anything else that we need to know about, like, are you a student athlete? Are you doing anything else? We take all of that into consideration in terms of offering what classes we would recommend to you. So if you have a lot going on, like some of you are commuting like over an hour to come here, which like, you know, yay on you. But we might maybe recommend a lighter load instead of doing like a full on load. And I think if you go into our presentation, I think we have a slide that talks about what's considered full-time and like part-time, things like that. So let's kind of break that down a little bit. So a full load of classes is actually considered 4 classes, so 16 units, all right? So in general, if you've got like, you know, not much and you can handle a full load, you can enroll in 16 units or 4 classes. But if, let's say, you've got a lot going on, or if you're working, or if you're going to be traveling, or doing things like that, we might recommend that you lessen down to maybe like 12 units, and that's still considered like the minimum for full-time, which is 3 classes. Okay, so 12 units, 3 classes. Each of our classes are considered 4 units. Do we not have it in there? That's okay. So I'm just explaining it to you now. That's fine. So that's usually what we recommend is between 3 classes and 4 classes. That's considered a full load. For some of you who are working, you know, like full-time, or if you've got like, you know, family obligations, things like that. And actually, let's pull up the part-time information if we can. So we would also potentially recommend going into applying for part-time study, which means you're going to be taking less than 10 units or less. And that's totally fine too. And we can help you once you enroll in classes and fall starting to kind of work out what the rest of your quarters kind of look like. But that is an option as well. So generally we'll recommend 12 to 16 units, but for some of you who qualify for part-time status, we would recommend you going part-time because we want you to be successful and not trying to force yourself into, you know, taking too many classes and then starting off your first quarter on the wrong foot. You only have 2 years here, so that's basically like 6 quarters. So that's like, you know, 1/6 of your time if first quarter is not going to go so well because you're putting too much on yourself. That's not okay either. So we want to make sure that you're successful, and if this is an option for you, then we would probably recommend doing that as well. So we give you those options in the course recommendations that we'll give. We'll say, hey, you can do 12, or if you want to, you can go part-time, or depending on what you give us, we would recommend part-time, or you have the option to go 12, but let's talk about that so we can see, you know, if that's doable for you. So we do give you the options and flexibility in that, but we give you all the information as well.
And then I had pulled up so once you're on the new student site, once course recs become available to you all, again, you'll be able to see this is basically a sample course rec, right? So it could look like this if you're being recommended the full 16. And then down here will indicate as to what the recommendation was based off of, again, the questionnaire, right? So if it was recommended, you only see 2 classes, for example, we'll say because of your answers on the questionnaire, we're only recommending 2 classes. And then as we showed you, went to UCSD website, and then here's all the part-time application information for undergraduates. Again, employment, and let us know you're working 20 hours or more. That would be one of the reasons why we would recommend to go part-time. So, those are the reasons to keep in mind with that. Now, there was a second part to that question, and I'll quickly answer it because we sort of covered it earlier, right? So we talked a little bit about double majors and stuff. So the other part of the question was, was there enough time to complete it? And again, it'll depend. But remember, as an incoming transfer student, the expectation is you're graduating in 2 years, right? So you have to think about the fact that you only have 6 quarters to complete most of your coursework. So this is one of those questions where, like, at the beginning of fall, you may want to come in and talk to us to kind of look at your specific records and help determine whether or not double majoring seems to be, whether or not it would be an option, because it'll all depend in terms of how much lower division coursework you've already completed or how much upper division coursework you've done, or your first major requires, and then how much the second one would require as well. So how does that combination look like? Again, we have to think about the 6 quarters that you'll have in terms of, and summers technically as well, but in terms of the 2 years that you're here at UCSD, how to spread out that coursework and how that's going to fit in within that time frame.
Right. And as much as you can to help us out in that, like, that would be great as well. Like, so again, like, talking to the different majors or exploring like the double major that you're thinking about and seeing if it's like the classes are what you want to do, or if it's, heading towards like some kind of career goal that you want to do, like, or letting us know like, hey, I want to do this as a career. Would this double major help out? We can help you with that too. But if sometimes we have students that come in, it's like, I don't know what I want to do, and I'm kind of thinking a double major, but I don't know what for or why, or and that's fine if that's something that you want to do. But then that might take a little bit longer for us to kind of work that out with you. Like, what does that look like? What are you anticipating? What are you wanting to do? What is your goals? What do you want to do after you graduate? So as much as you can do before coming into our office to kind of figure out and solidify certain things of, like, maybe even if it's just, I'm thinking about double majoring, here's 2 different majors I'm thinking of as a double major. Even that helps out. So we're not looking at, all 150 and plus majors as a potential second double major. But if you can kind of narrow it down and give us a little bit of guidance of what you want to do, it helps us in kind of formulating how to attack that. Okay. So again, talking to those major departments, seeing if that's something that you're interested in, and then coming to us and we can kind of help plan that out. But on top of that, it also depends on what else you want to do. So some of you might want to do internships. Some of you might be wanting to study abroad. Some of you might want to do research. So fitting all that in with other stuff you want to do, for example, like a minor, like a double major, or if you're also pre-health and you got to add those classes in as well, we're going to take all of that into consideration and be like, all right, you can do X, Y, and Z, but you might not be able to do A, B, and C. Like, we might have to narrow it down to be like, what is possible, what is not possible. But again, as much information as you can give us when you come in, even if it's like, writing out your questions ahead of time and being prepared when you come see us, makes it go a lot smoother. We get all of your questions answered at one time.
Okay, so I'm gonna do a quick recap on our time. So it is our 3:46. So that means we have about at least 15 more minutes for now to go through some questions. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through and answer some questions. We're gonna try to power through as many questions as we can. I might type out some answers, especially if it's questions that have been asked and maybe they're just clarification questions. You might be seeing me type out an answer for you, and rather than us be able to answer it live. So just keep an eye out for that as well. I just went ahead and did that for one question. So let's move on to the next question. So in terms of if the training states that their status doesn't show transfer as their status, who should they be contacting?
Okay. The reason that might be happening is depending on if you tried to come to UCSD before. So let's say maybe you tried to transfer in like a few years ago and then decided not to come to UCSD, but then transferred it again. That it could be reading an old status, or maybe if you applied as a freshman and decided not to come, and now you're coming back as a transfer, it might be reading an old status. So that definitely talk to UCSD admissions about that, so that they can get you up to your current status as a transfer student. Because we don't want that to mess up with what your degree audit looks like, because then you're going to get a freshman degree audit, and you don't want that because that's going to be something totally different. Freshmen do slightly different things and actually a little bit more than you all do as transfers. So you don't want that. You want to be like as a transfer with the minimum stuff you need in order to graduate, because, you know, y'all been in school, you all want to graduate, and we're going to help you do that. Okay. So as long as you contact admissions and get that sorted out, that'll probably be the best option. But sometimes that happens is if you try to come to UCSD before and decided not to come and are coming now, it might be reading an old record.
Mm-hmm. And then you see again the page, here's the contact information. So if you need that, go ahead and take advantage. You can either email them or give them a call during those business hours, and they should be able to get back to you.
Right. And then also going back to what somebody else asked previously, like if their transcripts might not be here or you're not sure if they got sent, definitely contact admissions too if you see that it was not received, but you know that you sent it. So definitely use this information as well.
Mm-hmm. In terms of, I'll answer this question quickly here, but so the next question was, where do I go to register for classes? So we went ahead and covered. So if you go to, so TrentLink is a website that we've mentioned a couple of times already. So definitely familiarize yourself with the website. But if you go to
bookmark it.
Yep, bookmark it, trentlink.ucsd.edu. Once you're on here under TrentLink Tools, it's going to be under classes and enrollment tools, and it's the WebReg tool right here. So this is where you get to plan your schedule, and then you're able to register for classes and add, drop, and change them. Now, again, you may not you won't have access to that yet. That's going to become available a little later in August. But as you're making and planning your schedule, once our course recommendations go out, you'll then be able to use the WebReg tool to then start looking in terms of how to plan out your schedule. So this is the tool you'll be using. So let's see the next question. It says, let's go to this next question, which is for the GEDEI offered during the fall quarter, because we're on a quarter system, not semester. Is it applicable towards our, sorry, let me rephrase that question. So for students who thought they only needed MMW 121 and 122, right?
Yes.
We talked about, we have a list of GEDEI course options.
Right.
So is that a class that they need to take in addition to MMW 121 and 122? And why would they need to take that class?
Okay. So so your GEs, so stuff that you need to do for ERC is definitely MMW 121, 122, no matter what, right? All of you have to do those classes, guaranteed. So on top of that, the DEI requirement, which we actually showed, if you actually go back to the degree audit where we actually showed the university requirements. So at the very bottom of your degree audit, where it says university requirements, where it has like the writing requirement, the American History and Institutes, and the DEI requirement, that's everybody across the board at UCSD. Everybody has to do that. So that's actually not an ERC requirement. That's a UCSD requirement that everyone has to do. The entry-level writing requirement, the American History and Institutes, and the DEI, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion requirement. So yes, that is on top of the stuff you have to do for ERC, which is MMW 121 and 122 at minimum. So everyone's going to have to do the DEI requirement, regardless of if you're in, ERC, or if you're in Norvell, or if you're in Sixth College. It doesn't matter. Everyone's got to do that requirement. So we don't control that. That's a university policy. We can help you in picking courses that can count towards that, yes, but we don't control that requirement. That's everybody's got to do that. So yes, it is on top of MMW 121 and 122, but it's not an ERC requirement. So that's where it's like, it's not really ours, but everyone's got to do it. So yeah. But if you see on the page, and it has this on your degree audit too, if you go to that link where it says the undergrad.ucsd.edu/program/di.html, it'll actually give you a list of the approved classes towards that. Only classes that are on that list can count towards this requirement. So not anything that you've like transferred in and you just petition it. It doesn't work that way. It's only classes on that list. So if the class you happen to take somewhere else is a direct equivalent through assist.org, or the department determines that it's a direct equivalent to a class that's on that list, then yes, you can use that. Otherwise, it has to be done probably at UCSD and only those classes on that list.
You should be able to find a DEI quiz. I'm having a hard time over here too, but yeah, if through the UCC, actually, I'm sorry, let me do this. UCC website, edu, and then,
things like diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's what DEI stands for. There we
right
go.
here. So it's the third link on here, and then it just links you to another page. But here's where you can find the list of approved courses. But again, to help facilitate the beginning of your fall quarter, that's why we put together that list that you can refer to, so that you can take a look at the classes that are being offered. We've gone ahead and done that, the part of the research for you all again for fall quarter. So just look at the list of approved courses. We know those are being offered. Any of those classes that you take, all students have to meet DEI for the most part here at UCSD. You take one of those classes, and that'll meet the requirement.
Yeah. And again, like we talked about with the upper division, lower division stuff, like you can take a lower division requirement for this if you wanted to. So you can take a lower division class. If you wanted to take an upper division class, that's okay too. Check on this list to see if you have the prerequisites for that class. Classes that this can overlap with anything in terms of your requirements. So let's say you're, for example, on this page, you're an econ major and you decide to take Econ 138 for your major, it'll also overlap with the DEI requirement, and that's okay. So you can do an overlap like that if you wanted to, if your major and the courses that are on here kind of match up. So that's okay. So it might not necessarily be an extra class, but everyone's got to do this requirement.
So the next question, I'll go ahead and try to answer this quickly, but so if, basically the question is if your submitted transcripts and you know you've submitted transcripts, but you don't see the courses listed on there, but you know you've taken the equivalents on through Assist, is that a concern and who you need to talk to basically? So you would, if you're concerned about the classes, just go ahead and contact us through the online advising tool, and we can check to see. So right now it is possible your transcripts have been received, but it also is also very likely that some of the coursework hasn't been posted onto your academic history. So the first thing to do is check your academic history, make sure it's to see if there's any coursework on there. If you see most of your coursework that you've taken listed on there, but there are some classes that you know you've taken, you know they're transferable, but they're not listed on that academic history, then you need to contact the UCSD admissions office as well to see if what's going on, or you may also need to submit updated transcripts. Sometimes we know students are taking summer coursework as well. So if that's a class that you're taking right now, it's not going to show it on there. Otherwise, if you already took that course prior to the spring quarter or spring semester, depending on where you're coming from, then make sure that you contact admissions to get those courses posted on there, that all the classes are that need to be that are transferable are showing on your academic history.
And again, admissions might still be working on them, so they have until August 15th to post everything. So right now, your records might have some stuff, but not everything, or some of your records might be blank. None of your transcripts have been posted yet. Doesn't mean that they're not here. They might be here, but they just haven't been posted yet. So again, wait until August 15th to see if everything's been posted. And then if at that point you see stuff that's missing, definitely message us through the online advising system to see if there's something wrong, or maybe something's weird with your records or anything like that. But as of now, because there's so many of you and only so many admissions officers that are working on posting all this stuff, just wait until about August 15th. So again, if you don't see anything right now, but everything says it's been received, just wait until August 15th.
In terms of our next question is, so if they took courses at a community college through the UC transfer pathway for their major, but they weren't necessarily following IGETC requirements, are they considered an articulation student?
It depends. It depends on your community college and what counts for IGETC and what counts for the UC pathway. Some of them overlap, and that's true. Some of them don't. So you might have to talk to your community college in particular to say if it can kind of overlap between the two. So we don't determine if you are IGETC or not. We base it off of whatever your community college has sent to us. So if your community college has certified you as IGETC, they send it to us and we'll just take it. So if they say no, you're not, we just go based off of that. So if your UC transfer pathway stuff matches the IGETC format, then yes, you could be, but they would have to certify you at your community college and send it over. Yeah, same. And then same thing is kind of with your UC reciprocity. If your UC academic advisor says, yes, you have met all of your lower division stuff and sends us a letter, we'll just take it. No big deal. But if they say no, then it's a no, then you would be an articulation student. So it's really all up to the institution that you came from coming here. So we don't determine that, it's them that determines it and tells us.
Okay. One of the questions is if they run their audit and nothing pops up after they've run and viewed it, that it shows that there's no classes on there. So for that, again, double check that courses are showing on your academic history. If courses are not on your academic history, then it's because admissions is still working through to post all those credits. One thing to keep in mind as well is our degree audit system is kind of going through some work right now. So it is also possible that some of the courses aren't showing correctly. There was a little bit of disclaimer, I believe, on there. So, and if you're having issues, you can always reach out to us through the online advising. Did you have any other recommendations in terms of that?
No, that's basically it.
Okay.
And then I think I saw one question that was at the very, very top, maybe.
Oh, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of, okay, so this is a very good question that we get all the time. But it says most of the classes that you may have gone to seeing the schedule of classes, and you may have noticed that classes are showing as full at this moment. So is it true that more seats will open up at the end of August for transfer students? And then do we have an idea in terms of how many seats may open up for our transfer students?
Okay, so actually let's pull that up. If we go to tritonlink.ucsd.edu, just so everyone can kind of see, you can see this information on WebReg too in Triton Link, but let's just go there first. Go to Triton Link Tools, and then, so you can either go into WebReg or Schedule of Classes to kind of see what the schedule of classes looks like. We don't have student access, so we can't actually, as advisors, access WebReg. But we can look at the schedule of classes, so they're pretty similar. So let's say, for example, you're looking at math as Amato is looking up, and you search for classes for fall. So as you can see, some of them, it only says there's 5 seats available. That's impossible. We're not going to have a class of just 5 students. So what you're seeing right now is seats that were available for our students who are continuing from spring, because they had to be able to enroll in some classes for their fall quarter. So they released some seats to them, and that's what you're seeing right now. So what they're doing is they're holding back seats for incoming freshmen and incoming transfers, which means later on when you all start to enroll in classes, I think August 19th, when you all start to enroll in classes, you're going to see a bunch of seats open up. Most of our seats, our sections are about 30 people. So as you can see, like on the screen right now, it might say like this one section for math has 5 available seats. It's going to go up to about like 25 to 30. And then you'll just be able to enroll in those classes, and it's just for incoming students. So we're going to block all of our current students from enrolling or changing anything to allow you all to take those spots. And then after that, I think the beginning of September or something like that, then the system's gonna refresh itself, and then everybody, current students and incoming students, will be able to adjust their schedules. So then it's kind of a free-for-all at that point. But we do hold off our current students to allow you all to enroll in the classes that are gonna open up a little bit more. So yeah, again, average, most of our classes, our section classes, are about like 30 people in a section, maybe 40 people. Our big lecture halls sometimes go up to like the biggest one we have, I think, is like what, 300 or 500, something like that.
Yeah, it's closer to 500. I think it's about 400 to 500.
Yeah, and then on average, our lecture halls are maybe like 150 to 300, 200, something like that. So obviously, yes, that was a good catch by the transfer student that asked that question. Is that, yeah, if you're looking at it now, these are fake numbers. These are numbers that don't pertain to you. These are just for our current students, so that they can get into some classes, because they need to also enroll in classes for fall. But you're going to have your own when it comes August 19th, around that time when that opens up.
And then the last question, again, just kind of as a recap. To confirm, so students need to complete not only ERC requirements and major requirements. Remember, there's a set of university requirements. So you have to be able to meet all your major requirements, your ERC requirements, depending on what your transfer agreements are, or if you're an articulated student, and then university requirements such as DEI, sometimes the American Histories and Institutions, so the AHI requirement, and in addition to meeting at least 180 units with at least 60 upper division units. So those are the sets of requirements that you need to complete.
Right. And actually, let's go to our website, or roosevelt.ucsd.edu. So you're going to be using this page a lot too. So if you go actually to graduation requirements, if you click on that, this actually tells you like all the requirements that you need in terms of graduating. Our GE page will tell you what you need for us in terms of your GE requirements. So the kind of a combination of these things will kind of let you know, like, once you've done all this, then you've graduated. And that's kind of what your degree audit is kind of doing, but all in one place. So once everything's uploaded into there, it kind of pulls all of this information, so you're not looking at different screens. So that's why we wanted to show you kind of what it looks like. And it is kind of a beast of a page, the degree audit, because it has so much information, but everything's on one thing. So you don't have to go to all the different pages, kind of like you can if you want to, especially if some of your stuff is not populated at this point. But you can also use your degree audit to kind of guesstimate, like, oh, this is my major, this is how many classes I have left, same thing with my GEs, university requirements, things like that. So, cool.
Okay. Well, it is 4:03.
Okay.
So we have run out of time at this moment, but I've gone ahead and answered a few of the questions. A lot of them were things that we've covered already. So to explain that in terms of, to recap again things, we are recording, and so we're going ahead and kind of go through the last part. So
yeah, so yeah, that's all the time we have for today, as Amato said. So we'll be sending out a recorded version of our webinar later on to your UCSD email addresses, along with some other important academic information. So be sure to just check your UCSD email address frequently. Make sure to enroll in courses during your appointment time. So when you go onto the online advising system, you can ask us questions through there as well. And then, your appointment time will be in WebReg, and that'll be available on August 16th. And hopefully we'll see you again at one of our other webinar sessions later on this summer. And we look forward to working with you all soon. Thanks a lot for being here.
all right, thank you.